You ever buy one thing, and somehow it turns into 5 more? Not because you planned it. Not because you were careless. And not even because you were bad with money. It starts with something small. A new phone. A better couch. A nicer pair of shoes. A new car. A kitchen upgrade. A smartwatch. A designer bag. A luxury apartment. At first, it feels like a reward. You tell yourself you earned it. You tell yourself it makes life better. You tell yourself it will help you feel more organized, more motivated, more successful, more put together. And for a moment, it does. For a moment, that new thing gives you a little rush. A little confidence. A little excitement. A little feeling that life is improving. But then something strange happens. The new thing enters your life, and suddenly the old things around it start looking wrong. Not broken. Not useless. Just wrong. That is when the spiral begins. Now your old charger looks cheap next to your new phone. Your old desk looks ugly next to your new laptop. Your old shoes do not match the outfit you bought for the event. Your living room suddenly feels outdated after you replace one piece of furniture. Your old habits start feeling inconsistent with the identity your purchase just created. And before long, what looked like one purchase was never really one purchase at all. It was the first domino. That is what this video is about. Because most people think unnecessary purchases happen because people are shallow, impulsive, or irresponsible. But the truth is more unsettling than that. A lot of unnecessary spending happens because of psychology. Because human beings are wired to seek consistency. We want our choices to match our image. We want our environment to match our upgrades. We want our outer life to make sense with the story we are telling ourselves inside. And once you understand that, you start seeing unnecessary spending everywhere. You start seeing why people buy things they never planned to buy. Why one upgrade leads to another. Why people with decent incomes still feel financially trapped. And why buying more often brings less peace than people expect. Because many purchases are not really about utility. They are about identity. They are about emotion. They are about relief. They are about the feeling of becoming someone new. And that is exactly what makes them so dangerous. Let's start with something simple. Imagine someone buys a new luxury car. Now, maybe they can technically afford the payment. Maybe the monthly number fits. Maybe they convinced themselves it is a smart reward after years of hard work. But once that car is sitting in the driveway, something shifts. That car is no longer just transportation. It becomes a symbol. It says something. About taste. About success. About where this person believes they're in life. And once that symbol is in place, everything around it starts to get judged by a new standard. Now the old clothes feel too plain. The old apartment feels too ordinary. The old watch feels too cheap. The old restaurants feel beneath the new image. Even the way they spend weekends starts to change. Not because the car demanded it out loud, but because the mind did. Because once people make a purchase tied to status or identity, they often start adjusting the rest of their life to match it. That is where unnecessary purchases are born. They are not random. They are connected. They come from the need to make the story feel complete. That is one of the biggest money traps in modern life. People do not just buy objects. They buy a version of themselves. And once they buy that version, they feel pressure to maintain it. That is why someone can spend far more than they planned without ever feeling reckless in the moment. Because each extra purchase feels justified by the last one. The new phone needs the better case. The better case needs the wireless charger. The wireless charger makes the old nightstand setup feel cluttered. The cluttered setup leads to a desk upgrade. The desk upgrade leads to better accessories. The accessories lead to a cleaner office space. The office space leads to more professional decor. And suddenly the original purchase is buried under a chain reaction of supporting purchases. Not because the person set out to be irresponsible. Because the brain hates mismatch. Mismatch creates discomfort. And discomfort makes people spend. That is the part many people never see. They think shopping is about desire. A lot of the time, shopping is about reducing psychological tension. You buy something new. That new thing changes the standard. The old standard starts to feel uncomfortable. You spend again to remove the discomfort. That cycle is powerful. And companies understand it far better than most consumers do. Modern marketing is not just trying to sell you an item. It is trying to sell you a world. A lifestyle. A mood. A status level. A self-image. When you see an ad for a watch, they are rarely selling the watch. They are selling control. When you see an ad for skincare, they are rarely selling lotion. They are selling confidence. When you see an ad for a car, they are rarely selling transportation. They are selling respect, power, and arrival. The product is just the entry point. The real sale is emotional. And that is why so many people end up with closets full of things they do not need and bank accounts that feel emptier than they expected. Because they were never only buying function. They were buying feeling. And feelings are expensive when you keep trying to purchase them. Now let's take this one step deeper. A lot of unnecessary purchases happen when people are trying to fix something that is not actually a shopping problem. Stress. Boredom. Loneliness. Insecurity. Exhaustion. Comparison. Lack of progress. The feeling of being stuck. People experience those emotions, but instead of naming them directly, they translate them into buying urges. They tell themselves, I need a fresh start. I need to upgrade. I deserve something nice. I need to get organized. I need to reinvent myself. I just need a few better things. And sometimes a purchase really does create a short burst of momentum. That is why it feels convincing. A new planner makes you feel productive. A new wardrobe makes you feel sharper. A new couch makes the house feel new again. A gym purchase makes you feel disciplined. A kitchen gadget makes you feel healthier. But the emotion usually fades faster than the payment. And that is the problem. Because the object gives temporary relief while the real issue stays in place. So now the person has the same stress, plus less money. That pattern repeats over and over. And many people spend years mistaking emotional relief for progress. They think they are improving their life. But really, they are decorating their stress. That is why unnecessary purchases often increase during emotionally difficult seasons. After a breakup. After a bad month at work. After feeling left behind. After seeing other people winning. After being overwhelmed by bills and responsibilities. It sounds backward, but some people spend the most when they feel the least secure. Because buying creates a temporary illusion of control. It creates the feeling that something is moving. Something is changing. Something is getting better. Even if nothing meaningful underneath is actually improving. Now add social media to that equation and the problem gets even worse. Because now people are not only buying to feel better, they are buying under the constant pressure of comparison. Every day, they see curated versions of other people's lives. Perfect kitchens, beautiful outfits, luxury vacations, new homes, matching furniture, aesthetic workspaces, perfect skincare shelves, designer accessories, expensive routines packaged as normal life. That kind of exposure resets people's expectations without them even realizing it. It makes ordinary life feel unfinished. It makes stable life feel boring. It makes enough feel inadequate. And once enough starts feeling inadequate, unnecessary purchases stop feeling unnecessary. They start feeling reasonable. That is how people slowly slide into spending habits they never would have accepted a few years earlier. Not through one reckless moment, but through repetition. Seeing the same kind of lifestyle over and over until it starts to feel standard. That is when people begin financing image. An image is one of the most expensive things a person can maintain. Because image has no finish line. Once you start buying to protect an appearance, there is always another layer. Another upgrade. Another category. Another expectation. Another thing that now feels too outdated to keep. That is why some of the most financially stressed people are not the lowest earners. They are the people trying to maintain a life that constantly requires supporting purchases. The visible purchase is rarely the full cost. The full cost includes the identity, the upkeep, the add-ons, the maintenance, the matching items, and the habits that come with it. That is how a simple purchase becomes a lifestyle commitment. And that is where people get trapped. Let's use a home example. Someone decides they want to freshen up their living room. Sounds harmless. They buy a new modern sofa. The sofa looks great. But now the coffee table looks too worn. So they replace the coffee table. Then the rug suddenly looks old. Then the lamps do not match. Then the wall art feels random. Then the TV stand starts bothering them. Then the paint color feels dull. And now a single furniture purchase has turned into a room redesign. But it does not stop there. Because once the living room looks elevated, the dining area next to it starts feeling off. And once the main floor gets upgraded, the rest of the home begins to feel uneven. The new sofa was never just a sofa. It was a new benchmark. That is how unnecessary purchases spread. They change the emotional standard of the environment. Now think about clothing. Someone buys one expensive jacket. Not 10 jackets. One. But that one jacket now makes their usual shoes feel too worn out. Their usual jeans feel too basic. Their usual bag feels out of place. And eventually they are not just dressing. They are curating a version of themselves around the new anchor item. Again, this does not happen because they are foolish. It happens because people want coherence. We want our possessions to make sense together. We want our environment to reflect our self-image. We want our lifestyle to feel like one complete picture. That instinct is natural. But it becomes expensive when every self-image upgrade turns into spending. This is why self-awareness matters so much in personal finance. Because if you do not understand the emotional meaning behind your purchases, you will keep solving internal tension with external spending. And that cycle can quietly drain enormous amounts of money over time. Not always through dramatic splurges. Often through reasonable, little decisions. A better lamp here. A new pair of shoes there. A slightly nicer bag. An upgraded subscription. A matching accessory. A decor fix. A convenience purchase. A reward purchase. A just this once purchase. None of them look disastrous alone. That is what makes them dangerous. The damage hides inside accumulation. That is also why many people feel confused about where their money went. They do not remember making one huge reckless choice. Because they usually did not. They made 50 emotionally justified ones. Now here is another part people miss. Sometimes the most expensive purchases are the ones that make your life harder to live in. That sounds strange, but it is true. When people buy expensive things, they often also buy new anxiety. The anxiety of keeping it perfect. The anxiety of maintaining it. The anxiety of protecting it. The anxiety of matching it. The anxiety of not looking like someone who cannot afford it. So instead of owning the item starts owning part of their attention. They become careful in ways they were not before. Restricted in ways they were not before. Afraid to use things fully. Afraid to damage them. Afraid to look inconsistent next to them. That is when a purchase stops being liberating and starts becoming a burden. And this is why some upgrades quietly reduce freedom instead of increasing it. You thought the purchase would improve your life. But now it requires more money, more care, more protection, and more supporting upgrades. That is not always an upgrade. Sometimes it is a more expensive form of pressure. So how do you stop this from happening? How do you protect yourself from purchases that multiply behind your back? The first step is to stop asking only one question before you buy something. Most people ask, "Can I afford this?" That is not enough. A better question is, "What else will this purchase make me want?" That question changes everything. Because it forces you to think beyond the item itself. Not just the price tag. The ripple effect. If you buy the luxury watch, what else will start feeling too cheap? If you buy the new car, what else will you suddenly want to upgrade? If you renovate one room, what else in the house will start bothering you? If you buy the expensive computer setup, what other accessories, furniture, and subscriptions will follow? Once you start thinking that way, you stop evaluating purchases in isolation. You start evaluating them as systems. And that is a much smarter way to protect your money. The second step is learning to separate identity from spending. This is huge. Because a lot of unnecessary purchases happen when people use money to prove something to themselves. That they are successful. That they are disciplined. That they are attractive. That they are improving. That they belong in a certain class of people. But identity built through spending is fragile. Because it always needs reinforcement. If you need your purchases to keep telling you who you are, you will keep buying reminders. A stronger move is to build identity through behavior. Instead of buying things that make you feel productive, become productive. Instead of buying things that make you feel wealthy, practice wealth-building habits. Instead of buying things that make you feel sophisticated, develop taste without chasing constant consumption. Behavior is a stronger identity than image. And it costs less. The third step is creating a pause between desire and purchase. Not forever. Just long enough to let the emotional wave pass. Because many unnecessary purchases feel urgent only in the moment. Tomorrow, they feel smaller. A week later, they often feel optional. A month later, many of them look ridiculous. Time exposes emotional spending. That is why a waiting rule can be powerful. If it is a larger non-essential purchase, wait. Sit with it. Watch whether the urge gets stronger or weaker. Ask whether you want the item, or the feeling attached to the item. That question alone can save people thousands. The fourth step is learning to appreciate functional things without demanding that everything look elevated all the time. This one sounds simple, but it matters. A lot of spending starts when people begin seeing perfectly good items as emotionally unacceptable. Not because they stopped working. Because they stopped matching the image. That mindset is expensive. There is power in being able to say, it still works. It still serves the purpose. It does not need replacing it. That kind of thinking creates financial breathing room. And breathing room is worth more than aesthetic perfection. The fifth step is becoming suspicious of the phrase, I deserve it, because sometimes you do deserve something. But that phrase can also become a shortcut around honest thinking. People use it when they are tired, when they are emotional, when they are trying to reward themselves without looking too closely at the math. The problem is, deserving something does not erase its consequences. You can deserve rest without buying something. You can deserve celebration without overspending. You can deserve better without turning every emotion into a purchase. Sometimes the healthiest reward is not consumption. It is relief from more consumption. That is a mindset shift a lot of people need. Because peace does not always come from adding more. Sometimes it comes from needing less. And that brings us to the deeper truth behind unnecessary purchases. A lot of them are not really about objects at all. They are about discomfort. People buy because they want to close a gap. The gap between who they are and who they want to be. The gap between how their life feels and how they want it to feel. The gap between their current reality and the image they keep seeing around them. And the market is always ready to tell them that one more purchase will close that gap. But most of the time, it does not. It just moves the gap. Now the standard is higher. Now the next layer feels off. Now the next purchase becomes necessary to protect the previous one. And the cycle continues. That is why people can earn more and still feel like they are constantly spending. Because their purchases are not solving the real problem. They are feeding the appearance of progress while keeping the emotional engine running. So if you really want to break free from unnecessary spending, you have to get honest about what you are actually chasing. Is it convenience? Status? Relief? Validation? Control? Belonging? A fresh start? A new identity? Because once you know what you are really trying to buy, you gain power. And power is what interrupts the cycle. Not guilt. Not shame. Awareness. The awareness to see when a purchase is trying to recruit 5 more purchases. The awareness to see when a reward is actually a stress response. The awareness to see when your environment is pressuring you into upgrades you never needed. The awareness to see when your money is being pulled toward image instead of stability. That is how financial peace begins. Not by never buying anything nice, but by refusing to let one purchase quietly redesign your life. Because the most expensive thing in the world is not always the item you buy. Sometimes it is the identity that comes with it. And the hidden bill arrives later. So before your next small upgrade, pause. Ask yourself, do I want this item, or do I want the version of me I think it represents? And even more importantly, what else is this one purchase going to make me want? Because if you can answer that honestly, you will avoid a lot of financial regret. And you will start keeping more of the money you work so hard to earn. Not by becoming cheap. By becoming conscious. And in a world built to make you consume without thinking, that might be one of the most profitable skills you can develop.